Hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Zone. We are back again. And of course, we're not ready to talk about the rest of the NBA because we're still going to talk about the Raptors today. And I have a special guest, Prab Waraich of the Waraich Report. I will link his channel down below, so definitely check that out when you get a chance. But first and foremost, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Kenyon. How are you doing? Thank you for having me on here.
Appreciate it. You are not my first guest because Coach Roach was my first guest and my favorite guest, but you are my second favorite guest and my second guest. So, first things first, we are coming to you before the Pelicans game today. Hopefully we win. So let's kind of go back in time a little bit and talk about a couple things. The deadline just passed. We just had a long break without basketball. So my question to you is, what did you think about the deadline for the Raptors?
Let's be honest, we expected a lot more, right? Because we keep hearing all these rumors about Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, even throwing in Gary Trent Jr.'s name, who I personally thought would be the first one to get traded, but yet we heard nothing about them. But then seeing some of the offers that were offered to the Raptors, you really question if it's better sometimes not to make trades than to make bad trades. And we can use this to kind of exemplify that Masai Ujiri never makes bad trades. I know he's probably had a few that I don't recall, but you do not give away players just for nothing, because then that leaves you with a reputation that you're someone that you can make trades for and get away with. You can kind of pretty much what Masai Ujiri does to others. You don't want it happening to Masai Ujiri, because then it gives you a reputation of, hey, we can rip this guy off. So they gave up a little bit too much for Yak Skillz, but I've always stated even before the trade deadline, regardless of what happens, whether they decide to rebuild or not, you still need a starting caliber center. So even if the Raptors do decide in the future to move ahead with Scotty Barnes, Yak Skillz is such a smart, intelligent, high IQ player that anyone would love to play with. And I think it's just going to be awesome having him forward, regardless of what the Raptors decide to do.
Absolutely. So I'm going to, before I get to the next question, I want to kind of direct my question more to what you said. So is it fair to say that sometimes, yes, indecision is good, or I shouldn't say indecision, but sometimes the moves you don't make are the better moves. However, are there also sometimes when you miss out on opportunities by not making a move? And that's that. I guess that's just a kind of a quick question that I have for you. It's hard to know what, because we don't have we don't have the
Absolutely.
benefit of full hindsight yet. But yeah.
Yeah, sometimes the best moves you make are the ones that you don't make, right? I mean, I know you're a Raptors fan for a while. If you recall, the Raptors were trying to trade Kyle Lowry way back, I believe in 2013-14, where it was rumored that he was going to the Knicks and we were getting back Tim Hardaway Jr. Like, you look at both of those players' careers and which way they've gone, and thankfully the Knicks refused that deal, and we know the rest is history. So some of the best deals, to be honest, are the ones that aren't made. So I'm okay with the Raptors moves. Again, I really like Yak Skillz. Did they give up a lot? Yes, they did. But you need a starting center regardless. So
Absolutely. The way that I described the deadline is I said when the Jakob Poeltl trade happened, I was very happy with it. I really liked that move. The fact that they didn't make another move because I was really
mhm.
anticipating something else, it made that move feel like a wet fart. So that's how I kind of described it. And by itself, I think it was a good move. I It's hard to know whether or not they gave up too much. I think the main issue that a lot of Raptors fans seem to have is the protections surrounding that 2024 pick. Personally, I don't mind it. So yeah, continuing on from that, my question is, I know it's been a small sample size, but Yak and Skills 2.0, what do you think?
My main concern with Yak was, look, I was excited, but I was like, how's the floor spacing going to work with him, Scotty, and Pascal? But given the fact that they're very good passers, all three of them, and they can operate in the paint, it was quite interesting to see them at first, but it seems like it's working out. Obviously, you know what, Nick Nurse is going to have to get a little bit creative because you can't play all three of those guys the entire game together. So you're going to have OG out there with him coming back. I think he's expected to play against the Pelicans. You're going to have Gary and Fred out there with Yak Skillz and maybe Scotty Barnes to space when Pascal's on the bench. So you're going to have to get a little bit creative, but I think it definitely works because, like I said, all three of those players are able to pass really well, and they're high IQ basketball players. So I think it works for that reason. And I'm not gonna lie, like I expected Jakob to be good, but I did not expect his high IQ on, especially on the offensive side, to be this good. So if anything, he's helped the Raptors offense a little bit more with his passing skills as well as his ability to finish around the rim.
One of the things that we've kind of missed for a long period of time since I want to say, because Serge did it sometimes, but really it was Gasol. And
Yeah.
even before Gasol, you could say Jonas was a good screener. And for me, I actually talked to Blake Murphy about this on the side. For me, I was like, you have to get a little creative, but the amount of space that you can create with screens, for example, if you have pick and roll action on the side and you open up those driving lanes where you're coming around to the top of the arc and then going down with really really good screens, sometimes illegal screens, as we've seen, but hey, that's okay. um, you see a very big difference, and I think it's interesting because it's done in a way that has really opened up the mid range for guys like Siakam, for guys like Fred, who Fred has struggled in the mid range, but now he has a lot more space to operate. And it's opened it up so much that it's also opened up passing opportunities with the downhill gravity. Samson Folk actually spoke on this on the Raptors Republic podcast. I want to highlight this is that the thing that it wasn't just a role partner that some of these guys were missing, but it was a big target that could present himself. Koloko is going to get there. I made the video on Koloko. I have all faith in Koloko, but he's a first year player,
Yeah.
Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. But he will get there. So the thing is offensively, there's a difference between Precious presenting himself as a target, and he's still learning how to do that, versus Jakob Poeltl, who came into the NBA fairly, fundamentally sound as a player on both ends of the floor, went basically learned under Tim Duncan for 3 years, right? Learned under
Yeah.
Pop. I'm gonna take a take from this guy named Zazu, who's on Raptors Live TV, and he always he said it's like we dropped off our Pokemon at the daycare. I said it's like we dropped him off to Professor Oak, and Professor Oak came up, gave him the rare candy, all these type of treats, and the Pokemon
Yeah.
came back, and it's strong. So it's interesting, and the fact that when was the last time that we had a center in his prime on the Raptors and ready to go? Because that is unique. We didn't have that with Jonas. We traded him before the prime, and
No.
Gasol,
He was past his prime, so
Gasol had fumes left in the tank, but we took that for as
we
long
took
as
those
we
fumes
could.
and ran with it. So
Yes.
we pushed that car as far as it could go. But yeah, that is a really good point. I was about to say Jonas Valanciunas, but I remember he wasn't exactly in his prime before we traded him. He was kind of coming into his own at that time. But again, personally, I just feel like the Raptors never utilized him properly just because of their style of play. But yeah, this is
Perhaps
exciting.
Antonio Davis, I think, would be the only one that I could think of.
Yeah, yeah. That's I didn't watch
Going
the
way back.
Raptors back then, but yeah, I started right after Vince Carter got traded. Unfortunately for me, so I saw some really bad days for the Raptors.
Gotcha. Well, yeah. So it's to me, the past couple games has been interesting. Today will be an interesting test, although I believe Zion is still out. It will
Yes,
be
he
an
is.
interesting test for the center spot, and as well as I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not looking at the schedule right now, but I
Yeah.
think we play Denver twice in the next 5 games. So that's going to be another interesting test. And I do believe that Yak plays Denver well. So, um, first of all, just to quickly preview the Pelicans game, do you think that they're going to win?
I do. I do. I think Yak has had a huge, huge impact on the Raptors, both offensively and defensively. The big thing here, I think that's going to really help the Raptors is that rest. Like we know, Nick Nurse has absolutely been grinding the starters and even the top, let's say, two guys off the bench into some really heavy minutes. I think the rest is going to do them some good, especially guys like Fred VanVleet, and we got OG and Anobi coming back. I don't know about you, but I'm personally really excited to see how OG and Yak play together. Like Jakob is a good rim protector. We haven't had that in quite some time, and now OG and Anobi, we know he's a very versatile defender. But now all of a sudden, someone does get the chance to blow by him, which is very rare. It doesn't happen. But then you got Yaka right there as well, right? So it's going to be really fun watching them. I think the Raptors take this one by about 4 points. I think it's going to be a close game, but the Raptors, you'll be amazed because a lot of fans, what we've been hearing is, well, they beat the Magic and the Detroit Pistons. It's just those two teams, but the Pelicans are a really good team. And correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if Jonas Valanciunas is playing today. That's going to be a really fun matchup as well to see him against his former team, obviously, but also his former teammate. So
I do believe he will be playing. It will be an interesting matchup. It will be a really good game in a couple
Yeah,
hours here.
yeah.
So we have some time to go before the game. I saw OG was questionable, so that's good that
Oh,
is progress. But we will see. My thing is, I'm like bubble wrap this man for as long as we
we need
can.
him. We need him. We need him. So
So, what's the other thing that is interesting, and you kind of touched on this a little bit with Poeltl and stuff like that, is the
yeah,
impact that it also has on driving lanes and guys like Scotty Barnes.
yeah,
One of the things that I've noticed is that Barnes, like the two games after, he was able to get downhill much more easily. Not that he when he gets going, it's good, but he doesn't
yeah,
have the same first step that say a Donovan Mitchell would have, for example.
yeah, yeah.
So thoughts on that?
I think it has a lot to do with, like you pointed out, the screening. I think you notice that for everyone. Like it creates so much more space when you have Fred VanVleet guys like Gary Trent Jr. who really need to get their jump shots off. And you notice the difference too. Like with all due respect to Precious, with all due respect to Chris Boucher, Pascal, and even Scotty, when they're setting screens, it simply isn't the same. So having this much space and having this much space makes such a big difference because now all of a sudden, when you have Yak creating this much space, players are wondering if you're going to point to the guy or if you're going to pass to the guy, excuse me, in the corner. So they're kind of in the middle of nowhere. So it leaves that extra space for Scotty Barnes to really accelerate to the basket. And obviously, given his size as well, it's easy for him to get in there and just easily jump over guys and go in for that big dunk. So I think obviously it helps guys like helps guys like Fred and Gary a lot. But it also helps guys like Scotty Barnes as well, who's a really good passer. And opposing teams are wary of that. So they're worried about the pass in the corner and yet trying to defend the basket at the same time. So they're kind of in no man's land there. And I think this is going to be great for Scotty Barnes as well.
Yeah, the other thing that's really interesting, and Nick Nurse has kind of hinted at this, is first of all, for those who want to see more Precious at the
Yeah,
four, he did
yeah,
talk about that in his most recent podcast, or sorry, presser. The other
yeah,
thing that I think will be interesting, and this is the real benefit, is having a center like a Poeltl or a starter caliber center, period,
yeah,
allows you to get minutes down for
and-
three of your starters. So
yeah,
it should, in theory, please, nurse, get starters minutes down for OG, Pascal, and
yeah,
Scotty. All those guys who are typically going to be guarding your Embiids, your whatever it may be. And so I
yeah.
think that it really helps. So I think that that's good. So with that being said, moving forward, there's 23 games left. What do you see the ceiling of the Raptors? I'll tell you what mine is after, but I want to hear yours first.
You know what? The first thing I did after the Raptors trade deadline was over, and particularly after they won the first game after the trade deadline with the Acapulco, was go through some of the schedules and really win whether the Raptors could actually win some of those games or not. And I'm going to be honest, maybe I'm being overly optimistic, and people have always stated, Prab, you're way too overly optimistic. But I could see the Raptors winning around 15 to 16 games. Again, assuming that, and I didn't take into account that they beat some really good teams like the Denver Nuggets or the Clippers in there as well. So I had those as losses. But considering all the bad teams they're playing, they should beat them. And then they're obviously going to get a few wins against good teams as well. I have them around the 15-16 mark. I personally think they can finish as high as sixth. Obviously, there's a lot going on with the Atlanta Hawks, which is I'm really curious to see what happens there with their head coaching, new head coach, potential new head coach. I don't see them finishing above the Raptors, nor do I see the Brooklyn Nets finishing where they are. I could see them dropping below the Raptors as well. So again, I could see the Miami Heat climbing a little bit in terms of standings. The only question will be New York Knicks, right? So I think it kind of obviously the Raptors win games, yes, but it also has to be dependent on the other teams as well for them to lose games. And obviously, Washington Wizards are ahead of us, but they also have a game in hand, and we also have 3 games against them, and we played them fairly well in the last several seasons. So
Well, I will say this: in terms of the Wizards, we have a couple of games against the Wizards coming up. Those
we
games
do,
are going to be crucial because we
yeah,
need those tiebreakers.
yeah,
In terms of the Hawks, completely agree. I always call them the fraudulent Atlanta Hawks. I'm not. I'm a huge fan of Dejounte Murray. Not a big fan of Trey Young
yeah.
in terms of not his talent, but how he plays on both ends of the ball.
Yeah.
But without getting too into those weeds, I will say this: actually do think that as much as Kevin Love is going to be beneficial to the Miami Heat because they didn't really have any sort of depth at that spot, I
Yeah.
think that they're going to struggle, and I actually see them dropping as the team because Lowry's been out. Butler, usually you can pencil him in for a max 58 games over the past couple years.
Yeah.
And Lowry, we will see. But again, another bubble wrap candidate for a guy who he can game. He's great, but he is slowing down, and he was starting to show his age in the Tampa season. So
Yeah.
I think they have two really older stars. Bam's coming back from injury from last year. I don't know if they have quite enough juice to really finish above. I think they're in the seventh spot right now.
They are.
But
Yeah.
okay, perfect. So we will see. But I personally have them pegged as a seventh seed. I think that they can get to six, but it's a tough road. You actually gave the exact number that they would need to really have a shot at sixth. So I
Yeah.
think seventh is possible. They'll probably get right there. They might even tie, but not have the tiebreaker or something like that, and just end
Yeah.
up in seventh. So my question then becomes: in the playoffs, what is their ceiling?
Are you talking about the Toronto Raptors or? Okay, sorry. I know you just covered the Miami Heat, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to continue on that, but
No. That's
um,
okay. Another
I
show.
think I think that I think with the Toronto Raptors, it's really hard because obviously there are certain teams you absolutely want to avoid. Obviously, I think they'll finish sixth. Maybe they finish lower, but a team you don't want to face in the first round is definitely a team like the Celtics. Like I think we could push them to six, maybe seven games, but you still don't want to face that team for obvious reasons. They got a really good closer in Jason Tatum. Jalen Brown can go off as well. Um, I think the Raptors ceiling, depending on the matchup, it's tough to see. I could see them pushing 6 or 7 games against a really good team in the first round. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to quickly go over the top 3 seeds. It's Boston, Milwaukee, and I forget who's the 3rd seed right now.
I think it might be Cleveland right now, but I'm not looking at it at this
Yeah,
instant.
yeah. So if it's Cleveland, man, if you're a Cleveland fan and you're watching this, you better pray the Raptors do not get that 6th spot because boy, we've played them well, right? So OG's done a marvelous job of guarding Donovan Mitchell. Like their guards just struggle. We have so much size, and look, it's going to be a fun matchup. I really do hope we face the Cleveland Cavaliers. Call
Oh,
me
sorry.
crazy.
It's the Sixers.
Oh, it's a Sixers. Oh, okay. Never mind. Then I see the Raptors.
Maybe you don't want to get sixth.
Maybe not, but I think that would still be a fun matchup, right?
It
Like it
would
could
be.
be very intense, and it would. I mean, I know there are a lot of fans that are tankers, that are pro tankers, and that are rebuilt. So it could. It'd be. It's going to be a team that obviously is going to be an ultimate test because Joel Embiid played us last season, so we could see how Yak plays him this season. But again, I don't possibly see them winning against them. I could see them pushing 7 games at maximum, but I think home court advantage is going to play. But maybe hopefully the Cleveland Cavaliers climb up to that 3rd spot because I would really like them in the first round. I mean, that would be a fun series. You know, Evan Mobley versus Scotty Barnes.
I think that
But
that's
without,
actually what ends up happening
yeah,
is so in terms of the top four,
yeah,
I think Boston will stay where they are. I think
yeah,
the Bucks with Giannis being a little bit injured with his hand right now, I
yeah,
think that they can kind of cruise a little bit. They'll probably fall back down to third, maybe fourth at worst, but I don't see
yeah.
them falling too far from there. Cavs, I can see flirting between fourth and third. The Sixers, I think, are the one team that could potentially climb above the Bucks. So I think that that will be interesting. The Nets are interesting as well. I actually think that they're a better team than people are giving them credit for, and that than people think. I don't think
Yeah.
that they're going to win
Yeah.
this year or anything like that because they're still just trying to figure out their own identity. But
Yeah.
very interesting team. So I guess yeah. You don't see the Raptors winning around.
Depends on the team, man. Like if call me crazy, if the Milwaukee Bucks finish third, I don't know what it is about the Milwaukee Bucks, man. We just had their number. Like Giannis is gonna get his, but Chris Middleton, I said this in a comment section somewhere on YouTube, and I said Chris Middleton is supposed to be the closer. His numbers have been atrocious against the Raptors throughout his entire career. Like he's been shooting very poorly. And then the only concern would be Drew Holiday, but I think call me crazy, bold statement. I think we could take the Bucks and the Cleveland Cavaliers. It all depends on the matchup, right? Because that's what the NBA is all about. Like sometimes you see good teams, but they face the wrong team in the playoffs and they end up being out. So it's not so much that I don't think the Raptors could get to the second round. It's just I truly feel like with the Raptors, it's all about matchup.
Yeah, so I think for me their ceiling, it's tough to get there, but their ceiling is a second round out. I don't think, it's hard to get there.
It
But
is.
I agree with you. If you somehow end up facing the Cavs, I think we're a really good matchup for the Cavs. I would much rather face the Bucks than the Sixers, is what I will say.
Yeah, me
Although
too.
the Sixers are an interesting matchup, we have actually never lost a 7-game series against the Bucks. Funny enough. So yeah, that's so maybe we'll see. I'm not saying that I want the Bucks, but I think we play the Bucks a lot better than we would play the Sixers. But we'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess I have a couple more things, and then we can kind of go to the close. But I will ask a question about the West before we close. So
Sure. Let's hear it.
first things first, what do they need to do to get to that ceiling, to reach the mark that you are saying? Is there something that on the floor that you're seeing that they need to do better than they have in the first 3 quarters of the season, or what?
With the Toronto Raptors, you're obviously assuming. Sorry, you're speaking of the Raptors, right? Because you mentioned the Western Conference. Okay,
Yeah.
obviously, this is a Raptors channel. I mean, a basketball channel. But obviously, we're discussing the Raptors. But I think one of the things I've really seen turn around with the Jakob Hurdle thing is to the chemistry. The chemistry just seems a lot better. The ball is moving a lot better. Like I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it seems like the ball is moving so much more. The assists, I'm assuming per game for the Raptors has been a lot higher recently since we've acquired Jakob and. I think you quickly touched upon this, and someone else has touched upon this in their YouTube podcast as well. Is look at the top 8 guys for the Toronto Raptors. We know the Raptors play very limited bench guys, right? So now the Raptors have their starting 5. Assuming Gary goes on the bench, you got Gary and Precious goes on the bench. Then you got Chris Boucher. And occasionally, if you want to play Thaddeus Young as well, like you got good 8 guys that you're going to play heavy minutes. Your 8 best players, and they're really good players that you could play. So I think it's going to create a lot better. I don't know how Gary obviously is going to feel going to the bench, but I think with Jakob there, it just seems like it's kind of shifted momentum and a little bit better chemistry with all of our starting players. And I just see the Raptors playing more as a team. And we've seen it in the past as well. Like the Raptors, when they're put in a position like this, they really, I know there's been all sorts of talks about locker room issues, but I think the Raptors are really going to gel together and finish the season strong. That's just how I feel. Just like kind of similar to how last season it was, but obviously they started that earlier, not just with 23 games.
Yeah, I think Gary just wants his money. So if he's if he's going to get
Yeah,
his money, I don't think he minds going to the bench,
yeah,
because I think the offensive freedom that he's given is not something that he would be awarded on a lot of other teams,
yeah,
even if the money was there. So I think he's fine. I did speak to some media members. I'm not going to say them right now, but it does seem like there is a somewhat of a fracture. But to your point, the team, for those guys to get paid,
yeah.
you got to win.
You got to win. That's
You
true.
have to win. That's the only, if you want a shot at all NBA, you want a shot at whatever it may be, whatever. If you want the money,
Yeah,
if you, and now I don't think that every single person is as financially inclined as people seem to think. Um, without, I'm not going to go down, but obviously, yeah. The real question then becomes, how do you win? Well, you have to play team ball. So
you do.
it'll be interesting to see moving forward if they can continue this style of play. I'm hoping that they do. And I agree. I think that I've been Fred neutral, but if we see the Fred that we saw last game,
Yeah,
and I think that if you can truly get healthy, except for the toe of Otto Porter, I
yeah,
think that you are a pretty dangerous team. One thing that I will say before the next part is this: it is really a shame that we got robbed of a full Otto Porter Jr. experience, because he and his skill set would be perfect on this team.
yeah.
He shoots the three. He's a career 40% shooter.
Hmm.
He defends, he passes, he moves the ball, he's smart. So
Yeah,
whatever happens, I really want to see him next year. And again, bubble wrap him to 60 games or whatever,
yeah,
because I think he would help uh, elevate this team for sure.
yeah, yeah.
So um, now that we've kind of talked about the Raptors, one day we'll talk about the offseason when the offseason comes. But in the meantime,
Absolutely.
I want to get your opinion on the Western Conference final, or sorry, the Western Conference. What are 2 playoff potential matchups that you would want to see?
Warriors versus Grizzlies. So
Okay.
two different matchups, right? So
Yep.
that is one matchup. Dallas versus the Phoenix Suns. I mean, you could go Warriors with Suns as well, but Dallas versus Phoenix Suns, just given the history. But another, actually, I'm going to change it. Not the
Also,
Dallas.
KD versus Kyrie.
That too, that too, that too. But I'm actually gonna say, you know what, Phoenix Suns versus the Pelicans. Obviously, it wouldn't be as exciting, obviously because the star power isn't there. But I mean, you do kind of have it. But Luca, excuse me, what we saw was Chris Paul and Zion Williamson. I don't know if you remember this. Middle of the season, Zion Williamson goes for a 360 dunk, and there's all sorts of beef
Yeah.
with the Phoenix Suns and the Pelicans. Now add KD to that mix. That's going to be a fun matchup. Like Brandon Ingram has been getting KD comparisons since he got drafted. So let's see that team fully healthy and against the Suns. That's going to be a freaking electrifying matchup.
It will be. The Western Conference is very interesting because a lot of the top tier teams don't have a lot of rim protection. The
Yeah,
style of basketball is completely different than
totally.
the East, which I kind of like that there's two different
It's yeah,
styles.
yeah,
Um, so the Eastern Conference teams tend to be a lot more grittier and like
yeah.
physical, whereas the Western Conference teams played in their style. But yeah,
Yeah.
was there any team that didn't make a move like that you that surprised you? I guess.
A team that didn't make a move. I'm trying to think of. Was it Miami Heat? Really surprised me that they didn't make a move. That was the team that everyone was talking about. They obviously needed a lot of improvements, and trade deadline comes and goes, and they don't even make any minor moves. That was kind of surprising to me, but that's gonna
I
be my
think the
team.
Bulls too.
Oh
Like
yeah, the
they
Bulls.
didn't.
Well,
That was a little surprising.
yeah, considering all the talks about they're gonna tear it down and everything, and then they decide to ultimately keep it together. I just don't think the market was there for a lot of top tier guys, which is also the reason why the Raptors didn't move some of their guys as well.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens in the off season for the Raptors, but it's been great having you. We will again. This is a basketball channel, not just a Raptors channel. So right now, I'm getting through my coverage for the Raptors. Everyone, stay tuned because I will be covering some draft stuff. I have already written the script for Scoot Henderson, and I will be covering some other guys. We will see if Brandon Miller is even in the draft. So, with that being said, Rob, it's been great having you. I hope to have
Likewise.
you again at some point, and who knows, potentially the other way would be great too. Either way, it has been great. I'm going to close this off, but everyone like, comment, and subscribe down below. It's been a great episode, and let me know what you think. Feedback's always appreciated and taken very seriously. All right, cheers.